Goodbye, beautiful mistake.
The smell of motor oil and burnt coffee had become my cologne over the past 15 years. At 3 in the morning, hunched over the engine of a rusted Ford pickup in my auto detailing shop, I should have been thinking about cylinder heads and transmission fluid. Instead, I was thinking about my wife Sienna's third girls' night this week. My name is Eddie Rollins, and I used to believe in loyalty the way other people believe in gravity, as an unchangeable law of the universe. That was before I learned that some people treat loyalty like a suggestion on a restaurant menu. "Eddie, you're going to burn a hole through that engine block if you keep staring at it like that," Ray called from across the shop. My mechanic and only employee was supposed to have gone home hours ago, but Ray Martinez had a sixth sense for when I needed company. Ex-con with hands that could rebuild a transmission blindfolded and a mouth that never stopped running. "Just thinking," I muttered, wiping my hands on a greasy rag that had seen better decades. "About Sienna again?" Ray pulled up a milk crate and sat down, cracking open his fourth beer of the night. "Man, you need to stop torturing yourself. So what if she's out with the girls? Women need their space." I wanted to believe that. God knows I tried. But the GPS logs in her car told a different story than the one she'd been feeding me. According to the navigation system I'd installed for her birthday last year, she'd been spending a lot of time at locations that weren't exactly girls' night destinations. Unless her book club had moved to the parking lot behind Muscle Beach Gym at midnight. Ray, you ever get that feeling in your gut that something's wrong, but you can't quite put your finger on it? Every day of my life, brother. That's why I went to prison. He took a long pull from his beer. But seriously, what's eating you? I pulled out my phone and showed him the GPS history. Red dots scattered across town like a rash, none of them matching the restaurants and wine bars Sienna claimed to frequent. Ray squinted at the screen, his weathered face creasing into a frown. "Huh, that's interesting. Your wife's been doing a lot of driving for someone who supposedly walks everywhere with her girlfriends." He handed the phone back. "You confront her about it?" "Not yet. Maybe there's an explanation." "There's always an explanation, Eddie. Question is whether you're gonna like it." The shop's landline rang, cutting through our conversation like a rusty knife. At 3:15 in the morning, phone calls usually meant emergency towing or drunk drivers who'd wrapped their cars around telephone poles. I grabbed the receiver. "Rollins Auto and Security." "Eddie, it's Mrs. Donnelly from next door. Our 78-year-old neighbor had insomnia and a telescope she claimed was for bird watching. In 15 years of living next to her, I'd never seen her look at a single bird." "Mrs. Donnelly, it's pretty late. Everything okay?" "Oh, I'm fine, dear. I was just wondering, does Sienna drive a white Jeep now?" My blood turned to ice water. "No, ma'am. She drives the blue Honda." That's strange. I could have sworn I saw her getting out of a white Jeep in your driveway this afternoon. Big, muscular fellow driving it. Looked like one of those fitness instructor types with the tight shirts and the protein shakes." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. "What time was this, Mrs. Donnelly?" "Oh, around 2 o'clock. Right after my stories ended. I wouldn't have noticed, but they were being quite animated in their conversation. Lots of hand gestures and such. Very close hand gestures, if you catch my meaning." Ray was watching me now, his beer forgotten. He could read the expression on my face like a mechanic reading a diagnostic code. "Mrs. Donnelly, I appreciate you calling. You get some sleep now." "Of course, dear. Oh, and Eddie? That young man left something in your mailbox. Might want to check it." The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a long moment, feeling like I was standing on the edge of a cliff that I hadn't noticed was there. "What was that about?" Ray asked. Instead of answering, I walked outside into the cool night air. Our house was only 2 blocks from the shop, and I could see Mrs. Donnelly's kitchen lights still glowing through her curtains. The mailbox stood at the end of our driveway like a small metal tombstone. Inside was an envelope with no return address. My name was written on it in handwriting I didn't recognize, bold, aggressive strokes that looked like they'd been carved rather than written. I tore it open. The note was short. "Your wife deserves better than a grease monkey. She's getting it. Z." I read it 3 times before the words really sank in. Then I crumpled it up, smoothed it out, and read it again. The paper felt expensive, the kind you'd use for wedding invitations or funeral announcements. Ray appeared beside me, breathing hard from jogging the 2 blocks. "Well, what's the verdict?" I handed him the note. He read it twice, then looked at me with the expression of a man who just watched someone else's house catch fire. "Z? Who the heck is Z?" "I don't know yet. but I'm going to find out. We walked back to the shop in silence. My mind was racing through possibilities, connecting dots I'd been trying to ignore for weeks. Sienna's new gym membership, her sudden interest in improving herself, the way she'd started taking her phone into the bathroom when she showered, the mysterious loads of laundry that appeared and disappeared when I wasn't home. Back in the shop, Ray opened another beer and handed me one. So what's the plan? I need to see her gym bag. Her gym bag? She left it at home today, said she forgot it, but if she's been going to the gym as much as she claims, there should be evidence. Ray nodded slowly. Evidence. I like the way you think. Very methodical. Very detective-y. We locked up the shop and drove to my house in Ray's pickup truck. The place looked different at 4 in the morning. Smaller, somehow, like it was shrinking in on itself. Sienna's Honda sat in the driveway, still warm. She'd gotten home recently. I found her gym bag in the hall closet, buried under a pile of winter coats that smelled like mothballs and broken promises. The bag was heavier than it should have been for workout clothes and a water bottle. Inside, tucked beneath a layer of expensive athletic wear I didn't recognize, was a phone. Not her usual one. This was a cheap prepaid flip phone, the kind people use when they don't want to be traced. Ray whistled low. Burner phone, that's never a good sign. I flipped it open. The message history made my stomach drop into my boots. Dozens of texts between Sienna and someone listed as Z-Man. The messages started innocent enough, workout tips and motivational quotes. But they escalated quickly into territory that made my face burn. Jesus Christ, I muttered, scrolling through increasingly explicit exchanges. Photos, videos, plans to meet at hotels I couldn't afford on my mechanic's salary. Ray peered over my shoulder. Well, there's your explanation. Looks like Sienna's been getting some extra cardio. The most recent message was from earlier that evening. Can't wait to be done with this charade. Eddie's so clueless I could bring you to the house and he'd offer you a beer. I closed the phone and set it on the workbench like it was radioactive. My hands were shaking, but not from anger. Not yet. The anger would come later. Right now, I just felt hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides with a rusty spoon. You okay, brother? Ray asked. No, but I will be. I opened the phone again and started copying down phone numbers, addresses, and meeting times. If Sienna wanted to play games, I was going to learn the rules, and then I was going to change them. The sun was starting to rise by the time I finished documenting everything. Sienna would be waking up soon, ready to start another day of lies and deception. But first, she'd have to deal with the fact that her gym bag was missing. I put everything back exactly as I'd found it, except for one small detail. I swapped out her car key fob with a dummy that looked identical but wouldn't start the engine. Ray had rigged it up for me years ago as a security measure for customer cars. What's that going to accomplish? Ray asked as we drove back to the shop. Nothing dramatic. Her car just won't start when she tries to leave for the gym today. She'll have to call for help. And when she does, I'll be listening. Ray grinned. You sneaky bastard. I like it. As we pulled into the shop's parking lot, I felt something shift inside me. The loyal husband who'd spent 15 years trusting his wife was gone. In his place was someone harder, someone who understood that loyalty was a two-way street, and Sienna had been driving in the wrong direction for months. My phone buzzed, a text from Sienna. Car won't start. Can you come look at it? Running late for my workout. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Ray, I think it's time we paid Muscle Beach Gym a visit. Muscle Beach Gym squatted on the corner of 5th and Main like a glass and chrome monument to vanity. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see rows of gleaming equipment and people in tight clothes admiring themselves in wall-to-wall mirrors. It was the kind of place where they sold protein shakes for $12, and everyone knew each other's body fat percentage. I'd driven Sienna to the gym after fixing her car, a process that involved me pretending to fiddle with the engine for 20 minutes before miraculously restoring power to the key fob. She'd been grateful and affectionate, kissing my cheek and telling me what a wonderful husband I was. The performance was Oscar-worthy. Now I sat in my truck across the street, watching her through the windows as she worked out on an elliptical machine. She was wearing one of those expensive athletic outfits I'd found in her gym bag, tight leggings and a sports bra that probably cost more than I made in a day. Ray sat beside me, eating a gas station sandwich and providing color commentary. There she is, folks, the cheating wife in her natural habitat. Notice how she keeps checking the door like she's waiting for someone. Shut up, Ray. I'm just saying, for someone who's supposed to be focused on her workout, she's doing a lot of looking around. Oh, wait, here we go. A white Jeep Wrangler pulled into the parking lot with the kind of aggressive precision that screamed, "Look at me." The driver who got out matched the vehicle perfectly. Tall, muscled, and wearing a tank top that showed off arms covered in tribal tattoos. His hair was styled with enough product to shellac a boat, and he moved with the swagger of someone who'd never been told no. This had to be Z. I watched him walk into the gym like he owned the place. Other members moved out of his way, and the staff behind the counter waved at him like he was some kind of celebrity. He made a beeline for Sienna's elliptical machine. "Bingo," Ray muttered. "Z-Man has entered the building." Through the windows, I could see them talking. Sienna's whole body language changed when he approached. She stood straighter, smiled brighter, touched her hair more. It was like watching someone flip a switch. The woman I'd been married to for 15 years disappeared, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. Z leaned against her machine, clearly flirting. She laughed at something he said, reaching out to touch his arm. Then he said something that made her look around nervously before nodding. They walked toward the back of the gym together, disappearing from my line of sight. "Where are they going?" I asked. Ray squinted through the windows. "Looks like there's a hallway back there. Probably leads to the locker rooms or offices or something." I was about to get out of the truck when my phone buzzed. Ray had rigged Sienna's phone to mirror messages to mine. A little trick he'd learned during his less legal days. The message that popped up made my blood pressure spike. It was from Mel, Sienna's gym buddy and apparent enabler. "Coast is clear. Z's office is empty for another hour. Have fun, you two." "Her friend is helping them," I told Ray, showing him the message. Ray shook his head. "Man, it's like a whole conspiracy. How many people are in on this?" Before I could answer, another message appeared, this one from Sienna to Mel. "Thanks for covering. Eddie's so clueless I could bring Z to the house and he'd offer him a beer." The same words from the burner phone. She was recycling her insults. "That's it," I said, reaching for the door handle. Ray grabbed my arm. "Whoa, hold up. What are you going to do, storm in there and catch them in the act? That's exactly what they'd expect from a jealous husband. You got to be smarter than that." He was right. Going in angry would just make me look like the bad guy. Instead, I needed to be strategic. "Okay, new plan. We wait for them to come out, then we follow Z. I want to know everything about this guy. Where he lives, where he works, what kind of car insurance he has." Now you're talking my language. We waited 45 minutes before Sienna and Z emerged from the back of the gym. They weren't touching, but they didn't need to. The electricity between them was visible from across the street. They talked for another few minutes by the front desk. Then Sienna headed for the parking lot while Z disappeared back into the gym. My phone buzzed with a message from Sienna. "Great workout today. Grabbing lunch with Mel, then running some errands. See you tonight. Love you." I watched her drive away in the Honda, then turned my attention back to the gym. Z was now working with a client, a young blonde woman who hung on his every word like he was dispensing the secrets of the universe. Everything about his body language screamed arrogance, from the way he stood with his chest puffed out to how he constantly checked his reflection in the mirrors. "This guy's a real piece of work," Ray observed. "Look at him posing while he's supposed to be training that poor girl." After an hour, Z finished with his client and headed for the locker room. 20 minutes later, he emerged in street clothes, designer jeans, expensive sneakers, and a shirt that was probably worth more than my monthly mortgage payment. "Showtime," I said, starting the truck. We followed the white Jeep through downtown traffic, staying back far enough to avoid detection. Z drove like he was in a music video, weaving between cars and running yellow lights. He finally pulled into the parking lot of Riverside Towers, a luxury apartment complex that overlooked the river. "Fancy," Ray commented as we watched Z disappear into the building. "Personal trainers must make more than I thought." I parked across the street and pulled out my phone. A quick internet search revealed that one-bedroom apartments in Riverside Towers started at $3,000 a month. Even if Z was the most successful trainer in town, that seemed like a stretch on a gym employee's salary. "Ray, I need you to do me a favor." "Go ahead." "You still have contacts from your old life? People who can find out information about someone?" Ray grinned. "You want me to run a background check on Muscle Boy? I thought you'd never ask." While Ray made some calls, I sat in the truck and watched Z's building. My phone kept buzzing with messages from Sienna, updates about her lunch with Mel, photos of salads and lattes, cheerful lies wrapped in heart emojis. Each message felt like a small betrayal. but I forced myself to respond normally. Sounds great, honey. Love you too. Ray hung up his phone and turned to me with a satisfied expression. Your boy Zeke is quite the character. Real name is Zane Carter, age 34, originally from Florida. He's got a record, nothing major, just some attack charges that got pleaded down to disturbing the peace. Apparently, he has trouble controlling his temper when things don't go his way. What else? He's been working at Muscle Beach for about 8 months. Before that, he was at 3 other gyms in 3 different states. Seems like he has a pattern of getting involved with married clients and then moving on when things get messy. The information hit me like a punch to the gut. Sienna wasn't special to this guy. She was just another conquest, another married woman he could manipulate and discard. There's more, Ray continued. My guy did some digging into his finances. Z's got some serious debts. Credit cards maxed out, behind on his car payments, the works, that fancy apartment. He's 3 months behind on rent. So he's broke. Worse than broke, he's desperate. And desperate people do stupid things. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a new message. But this one wasn't from Sienna. It was from Z himself, sent to her phone but mirrored to mine. Can't wait to get rid of the deadweight. Your husband's pathetic. When you're ready to upgrade permanently, I'll be here. Sienna's response came quickly. Soon. I just need to figure out the financial stuff. Eddie's got more saved up than he lets on. My hands clenched around the steering wheel. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning to take me for everything I was worth. Ray, I need you to do something else for me. What's that? I need you to make Z's life very uncomfortable. Nothing illegal, nothing that could trace back to us, just inconvenient. Ray's grin widened. Brother, you just made my day. The Riverside rooftop bar was Sienna's new favorite spot for girls' night out. Perched on top of the Marriott downtown, it offered panoramic views of the city and cocktails that cost more than most people's hourly wage. It was also, according to the GPS logs and mirrored messages, where she'd been meeting Zane for the past month. I sat at a corner table nursing a beer that tasted like disappointment, watching Sienna hold court with her usual crew. Mel was there, of course, along with Jules from the tech firm where Sienna worked in HR. They were dressed to end and acting like they owned the place, their laughter carrying across the rooftop like broken glass. What they didn't know was that I'd been planning this moment for 2 weeks. Ray had done his job beautifully. Zane's white Jeep had suffered a series of mysterious mechanical failures. Dead battery, slashed tires, sugar in the gas tank. Nothing permanent, nothing that couldn't be fixed, but enough to make his life a constant stream of inconvenience and expense he couldn't afford. The gym had also received several anonymous complaints about inappropriate conduct between trainers and clients. Management was starting to ask uncomfortable questions. But tonight was about more than petty revenge. Tonight was about exposing the truth in front of an audience. I'd arrived early and chosen my table carefully, close enough to hear their conversation, but far enough away to avoid immediate detection. Sienna had her back to me, but I could see Mel and Jules clearly. They were in full gossip mode, their voices carrying in the evening air. I still can't believe you're actually going through with this, Jules was saying, swirling her martini. I mean, Eddie seems like a decent guy. Decent doesn't pay for this lifestyle, Sienna replied, gesturing at the expensive bar around them. I'm 32 years old, Jules. I can't spend the rest of my life married to a mechanic who smells like motor oil. Mel laughed. Plus, have you seen Zane without his shirt? Girl, you're trading up in every possible way. It's not just about looks, Sienna said, though her tone suggested it absolutely was. Zane has ambition. He's got plans. We're going to move to Miami and open our own fitness studio. With what money? Jules asked. Sienna's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. Eddie's been squirreling away money for years. He thinks I don't know about his savings account, but I've been watching. There's almost $200,000 in there. My blood turned to ice. She was right. I had been saving money, planning for our future together. A house with a bigger garage, maybe a vacation to Europe, retirement someday. Never in a million years did I imagine she was planning to steal it. How are you going to get access to it? Mel asked. I've got copies of everything. Account numbers, passwords, the works. Once I file for divorce, my lawyer says I'm entitled to half of everything anyway. But why settle for half when I can have it all? Jules looked uncomfortable. Sienna, that sounds like fraud. It's only fraud if you get caught, Mel said with a laugh. Besides, Eddie's so trusting he probably won't even notice until it's too late. That was my cue. I stood up, walked over to their table, and pulled out the empty chair next to Sienna. She turned around, and the color drained from her face like someone had pulled a plug. "Ladies," I said, sitting down, uninvited. "Mind if I join you?" The silence that followed was deafening. Sienna's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Mel and Jules suddenly found their drinks fascinating. "Eddie," Sienna finally managed, "what are you doing here?" "Having a drink, same as you." I signaled the waitress and ordered another beer. "Don't let me interrupt. You were talking about savings accounts, I think?" Sienna's face went through several shades of red before settling on a sickly pale green. We were just planning to rob me blind and run off to Miami with your boyfriend?" I pulled out my phone and set it on the table. "Would you like to hear the recording, or should I just play it for everyone?" Mel started to stand up. "Maybe we should go." "Sit down, Mel." My voice carried enough authority to make her freeze halfway out of her chair. "You're part of this too. All those times you helped them meet up, all those lies you helped Sienna tell. You think I don't know?" Jules was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "Eddie, I don't know what you think you heard, but I heard my wife planning to steal my life savings to fund her new life with Zane Carter. I heard her best friend helping her cheat. And I heard you, Jules, asking the right questions, but not having the backbone to do anything about it." I pulled out a small recording device and placed it next to my phone. "This little gadget has been sitting under your usual table for the past 3 weeks. Amazing what people will say when they think nobody's listening." Sienna found her voice. "You've been spying on me?" "I've been protecting myself. There's a difference." The rooftop bar had gone quiet around us. Other patrons were starting to stare, sensing drama in the air. The waitress approached with my beer, took one look at the tension at our table, and quickly retreated. "How long have you known?" Sienna asked quietly. "About the affair? A few weeks. About the money? Since tonight? Though I have to say I'm impressed by your planning. Copying my account information, getting a lawyer, even having Mel here help coordinate your meetings. Very thorough." Mel finally found her courage. "Eddie, you don't understand. Sienna's been unhappy for years. She deserves what she's earned," I interrupted. "And what she's earned is a front row seat to watch her life fall apart." I stood up and raised my beer bottle. "Ladies and gentlemen," I called out to the entire rooftop bar, "I'd like to propose a toast." The other patrons turned to look at us. Sienna grabbed my arm, trying to pull me back down. "Eddie, don't do this. Please." I gently removed her hand from my arm. "To my loving wife, Sienna, who's been working so hard at the gym lately, and to her personal trainer, Zane, who's been giving her such, intensive instruction." I pressed play on the recording device. Sienna's voice filled the air, crystal clear. "Eddie's so clueless. I could bring Zane to the house and he'd offer him a beer." The reaction was immediate. Gasps, whispers, a few uncomfortable laughs. Sienna buried her face in her hands while Mel and Jules tried to make themselves invisible. But I wasn't done. I pulled out my phone and opened the mirrored messages. "And here's my personal favorite text exchange from this afternoon." I read aloud. "Can't wait to get rid of the deadweight. Your husband's pathetic." I looked around the crowd. "That's Zane talking about me, by the way. And here's my wife's response. Soon. I just need to figure out how to get all his money." The whispers turned into a low roar of disapproval. Several people pulled out their phones, no doubt recording the scene for social media. In a town this size, everyone would know about this by morning. Sienna stood up abruptly, knocking over her chair. "I'm leaving." "Great idea," I said. "Oh, but you might want to call an Uber. Your car won't start." She stared at me. "What did you do?" "Same thing I did 2 weeks ago when you were running late for the gym. Funny how you never questioned it then?" I held up her key fob. "Remote end switch. Ray's idea, actually. Very handy for preventing getaway attempts." Security was starting to move toward our table, but I was already heading for the elevator. I'd said what I came to say, and the audience had heard every word. As the elevator doors closed, I caught a glimpse of Sienna standing in the middle of the rooftop bar, surrounded by staring strangers and abandoned by her friends. She looked small and lost, nothing like the confident woman who'd been planning to destroy my life an hour earlier. My phone buzzed as I walked to my truck. A text from Zane. "What the heck did you do? Sienna's hysterical and half the gym is calling me." I typed back, "Just getting started. Hope you like attention, because you're about to get a lot of it." His response came quickly. "You want to play games, old man? Let's play." I smiled as I started the truck. Zane had no idea what he was up against, but he was about to learn that some games have consequences, and I'd been playing by his rules long enough. Time to change the game entirely. Zane was waiting for me in the parking lot of my shop at 6 in the morning, leaning against his white Jeep like he owned the place. He'd traded his usual gym attire for jeans and a leather jacket that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Even in civilian clothes, he looked like what he was, a predator dressed up to blend in with decent society. I pulled my truck up slowly, taking my time to assess the situation. Ray's pickup was already there, which meant my backup had arrived early. Good. I had a feeling I was going to need it. "Eddie Rollins," Zane called out as I got out of my truck. His voice carried the kind of fake friendliness that barely concealed a threat. "We need to talk." "Do we?" I walked toward the shop's entrance, keys in hand. "Because I thought your girlfriend made your position pretty clear. Something about me being pathetic deadweight?" "Sienna's upset. You humiliated her last night in front of half the town." I told the truth. There's a difference. Zane pushed off from his Jeep and took a step toward me. Up close, he was bigger than I'd expected. At least 6'2" and built like someone who lived in the gym. His arms were covered in elaborate tattoos that probably had deep personal meaning but looked like a comic book had exploded on his skin. "Look, old man, I don't want any trouble, but you crossed a line last night." "I crossed a line?" I stopped walking and turned to face him fully. "You've been screwing my wife for months, planning to steal my money and leaving threatening notes in my mailbox." "But I crossed a line? That note was just letting you know where things stood. Man to man." "Man to man." I tasted the words like they were poison. "Is that what you call it when you seduce married women and then try to rob their husbands?" Ray emerged from the shop, wiping his hands on a rag. He took one look at the situation and positioned himself where he could intervene if things went sideways. "Morning, Eddie. We got company. Ray, meet Zane Carter. Zane, this is Ray Martinez, my business partner and the guy who's been making your life so interesting lately." Zane's eyes narrowed. "So you're the one who's been messing with my car?" Ray grinned. "Prove it." "I don't need to prove anything. I know it was you." Zane took another step forward, now close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something expensive and aggressive that probably came in a bottle shaped like a tool. "Zane," I said calmly, "you're trespassing on my property, threatening my employee, and generally making yourself unwelcome. I suggest you leave." "I'm not going anywhere until we settle this." "Settle what? You want my wife? Take her. You want my money? Good luck with that. My lawyers have been busy since last night." That got his attention. "What lawyers?" "The kind that specialize in protecting assets during messy divorces. Turns out, when you have recorded evidence of someone planning to commit fraud, judges tend to take a dim view of their settlement claims." Zane's face darkened. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Sitting in your little grease pit playing with your toys, thinking you can outsmart people who are better than you." "Better than me?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Zane, you're a 34-year-old personal trainer who lives in an apartment you can't afford, drives a car you can't pay for, and seduces married women because single ones see right through you. What exactly makes you better than anyone? I'll show you what makes me better." He swung at me with a right hook that would have taken my head off if I hadn't been expecting it. But I'd been in enough fights during my army days to recognize the setup. I ducked under his punch and came up inside his guard, driving my shoulder into his chest and sending him stumbling backward. "Eddie!" Ray called out. "You want me to call the cops?" "Not yet," I replied, keeping my eyes on Zane. "Let's see if our friend here wants to escalate this further." Zane regained his balance and came at me again, this time with a combination of punches that showed he'd had some training. But training in a gym wasn't the same as fighting for real, and I could see the frustration building in his eyes as I avoided his attacks. He overcommitted on a left hook, and I stepped aside, letting his momentum carry him past me. As he stumbled by, I stuck out my foot and sent him sprawling face first into a pile of old tires I'd been meaning to dispose of. "You son of a witch!" He scrambled to his feet, his designer clothes now decorated with grease stains and tire marks. You're going to what?" I interrupted. "Beat me up?" "Zane, I spent 4 years in the army learning how to hurt people professionally. You spent 4 years learning how to look good in a mirror. This isn't going to go the way you think it is." Ray had pulled out his phone and was recording everything. "This is better than cable," he muttered. Zane wiped his mouth, smearing the red from his split lip, and glared at me with pure hatred. "This isn't over. Yes, it is. You're done with my wife, you're done with my money, and you're done coming to my place of business. Find another town, Zane. This one's getting too small for you. You can't make me leave. I don't have to. See, the thing about small towns is that everybody talks. And after last night, everybody knows exactly what kind of man you are. How many clients do you think you'll have left by the end of the week? His face went pale as the implications sank in. In a place like this, reputation was everything, and his was now radioactive. Plus, I continued, I've got friends at the gym. Turns out management has been getting complaints about inappropriate conduct between trainers and married clients. Amazing how these things snowball. You bastard. I'm a bastard who's been pushed too far by people who mistook kindness for weakness. The difference is, I'm a bastard who fights back. Zane looked around the parking lot like he was seeing it for the first time. The modest auto shop, the working-class neighborhood, the life he'd tried to steal from me. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter but no less venomous. Sienna was right about you. You are pathetic, living in this dump, working with your hands like some kind of peasant. She deserves better than this. Maybe she does, but she doesn't deserve better than me, and she sure as heck doesn't deserve you. I walked closer to him, close enough to see the fear starting to creep into his eyes. Here's what's going to happen, Zane. You're going to get in that overpriced Jeep, drive back to your overpriced apartment, and start packing. Because this town just became very unfriendly to people like you. And if I don't, Ray stepped forward, cracking his knuckles, then you'll be dealing with both of us. And trust me, pretty boy, I don't fight as clean as Eddie does. Zane looked back and forth between us, clearly calculating his odds. Whatever he saw in our faces convinced him that discretion was the better part of valor. This isn't over, he repeated, but the fight had gone out of his voice. Yes, it is, I said firmly. It's been over since the moment you left that note in my mailbox. You just didn't know it yet. He walked back to his Jeep, moving carefully like a man who'd just discovered he wasn't as tough as he thought. As he opened the driver's door, he turned back to me one last time. What about Sienna? What about her? You're just going to throw away 15 years of marriage? I considered the question seriously. Zane? She threw it away the moment she decided you were worth more than our wedding vows. I'm just cleaning up the mess. He got in the Jeep and drove away, leaving behind nothing but tire marks and the lingering smell of expensive cologne. Ray and I watched until he disappeared around the corner. Think he'll actually leave town? Ray asked. He'll leave. Men like Zane are predators, and predators always move on when the hunting gets difficult. My phone buzzed with a text from Sienna. We need to talk. I'm coming to the shop. I showed the message to Ray. Looks like round 2 is about to begin. You want me to stick around? No, this is something I need to handle alone. Ray nodded and headed for his truck. Good luck, brother. And remember, you're not the bad guy here. As his truck disappeared down the street, I realized he was wrong. I wasn't the bad guy, but I wasn't the good guy anymore either. I was something else entirely. A man who'd been pushed past his breaking point and discovered he had a talent for pushing back. Sienna's Honda pulled into the parking lot 15 minutes later. She sat in the car for a long moment before getting out, and when she finally did, she looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. Time for the final confrontation. Sienna looked terrible. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her makeup was smudged, like she'd been crying, and she was wearing the same clothes from last night. She walked toward me with the hesitant steps of someone approaching a dangerous animal. Eddie, we need to talk. Do we? Because I thought you made your feelings pretty clear at the bar last night. She winced. I was angry. I said things I didn't mean. Which part didn't you mean? The part where you called me pathetic deadweight, or the part where you planned to steal my life savings? It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I walked into the shop, leaving the door open behind me. She followed, her footsteps echoing in the high-ceilinged space. The shop smelled like motor oil and honest work, scents that had once comforted me but now felt like accusations. This was my world, practical, straightforward, built on trust and handshake deals. It was everything Sienna had decided she was too good for. Eddie, please, can we just sit down and talk about this like adults? Adults don't cheat on their spouses and plan to rob them blind. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I know you're angry. I'm not angry, Sienna. I'm disappointed. There's a difference. Then why did you humiliate me in front of everyone last night? If you're not angry, why are you trying to destroy my life? I turned to face her fully. I'm not trying to destroy your life. I'm trying to save what's left of mine. She started crying then, big dramatic tears that might have moved me a month ago. Now they just looked like another performance, another manipulation. I never meant for it to go this far, she sobbed. It just happened. Zane was charming and attentive. And you were always working, always covered in grease, always talking about cars and engines. I felt invisible. So you decided to become visible by screwing your personal trainer and planning to rob me? It wasn't supposed to be about money. That was Zane's idea. Of course it was. Because you're just an innocent victim in all this. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her mascara further. I know how it looks, but you have to understand. I felt trapped. Married to a mechanic, living in this boring town, doing the same things every day. I wanted more. More what? More money? More excitement? More attention from men who look good without their shirts? More everything. The words exploded out of her with surprising force. More than this shop, more than this life, more than watching you come home covered in grease every night talking about transmissions and oil changes. I wanted to matter, Eddie. I wanted to feel alive. And I made you feel dead? You made me feel ordinary. The word hung in the air between us like a blade. Ordinary. In her mind, that was the worst thing I could have made her feel. I see. I walked over to my workbench and picked up a wrench, turning it over in my hands. So let me make sure I understand this. You felt ordinary being married to a man who loved you, supported you, and never once gave you reason to doubt his loyalty. You felt trapped, living in a house that was paid for, driving a car that was maintained for free, and having a husband who asked for nothing more than honesty and faithfulness in return. That's not, and your solution to feeling ordinary was to have an affair with a personal trainer who's been run out of 3 different towns, who's broke, who's been arrested for attack, and who saw you as nothing more than a meal ticket. Her face went white. How do you know about his record, about his debts, about the other married women he's seduced and abandoned? Sienna, I've known about Zane longer than you think. I know about his maxed out credit cards, his overdue rent, his pattern of targeting lonely wives with money. Did you really think you were special to him? She sank onto a milk crate, the fight going out of her. He said he loved me. He loved your access to my bank account. That's not true. I pulled out my phone and played one of the recorded conversations from the bar. Zane's voice filled the shop. The husband's got money saved up. Once we get our hands on it, we can disappear to Miami, find some other sucker to fund the lifestyle. Sienna's face crumpled. When was this recorded? 3 days ago, while you were in the bathroom, he was talking to Mel about his exit strategy. Want to hear the part where he calls you desperate and easy? Stop. Or the part where he bets Mel that he can get you to leave me within a month? Stop it. Or maybe you'd prefer the video of him with his other girlfriend, the one he's been seeing on the nights you thought he was working late? She looked up at me with horror. What video? I didn't have a video. I was bluffing. But her reaction told me everything I needed to know. She'd suspected but hadn't wanted to face the truth. There is no other girlfriend, she said weakly. There's always another girlfriend with men like Zane. You were just the one with the most money? She buried her face in her hands and sobbed. These tears seemed real, born from genuine pain rather than manipulation. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Eddie, I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, start over, rebuild what we had. What we had was built on trust, Sienna. You can't rebuild that. People make mistakes. People forgive. Some mistakes, yes, but not this. Not planning to steal from me. Not humiliating me in front of the entire town. Not throwing away 15 years for a man who saw you as a mark. She looked up at me with desperate eyes. So that's it? You're just going to throw away our marriage? I'm not throwing it away. You already did that. What about for better or worse? What about till death do us part? What about forsaking all others? What about honor and cherish? You broke those vows first, Sienna. I'm just acknowledging reality. She stood up slowly, like an old woman with arthritic joints. Fine. You want a divorce? We'll get a divorce. But I'm entitled to half of everything. The house, the business, the savings accounts. Actually, you're not. What do you mean? I walked over to a filing cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. Remember when we got married and my lawyer suggested a prenup? You said it was unromantic, that people who really loved each other didn't need contracts. We don't have a prenup. No, but we do have something else. A postnuptial agreement that you signed 3 years ago when I took out the business loan for the shop expansion. Her face went pale. I don't remember signing anything like that. It was buried in the loan paperwork. You signed it without reading it, just like you signed everything else I put in front of you. The agreement states that in the event of divorce due to adultery, the innocent party retains full ownership of all assets acquired during the marriage. That's not legal. It's completely legal, and I have recorded evidence of your adultery and your intention to commit fraud. My lawyer says it's the most airtight case he's seen in 20 years. She stared at me like I was a stranger. You planned this. I protected myself. There's a difference. For how long? How long have you been planning to leave me? I never planned to leave you, Sienna. I planned for the possibility that you might leave me, and it turns out I was right to do so. She walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. You know what? Maybe Zane was right about you. Maybe you are pathetic. Not because you're a mechanic or because you smell like motor oil, but because you're the kind of man who would rather set traps than fight for his marriage. And you're the kind of woman who would rather cheat than communicate. I guess we both learned something about ourselves. She left without another word, the door slamming behind her hard enough to rattle the windows. I stood in the sudden silence, surrounded by the tools of my trade and the wreckage of my marriage. My phone buzzed, a text from Ray. How did it go? I typed back, it went exactly how it needed to go. But as I looked around the empty shop, I wondered if winning was supposed to feel this hollow. I'd outmaneuvered them both, protected my assets, and exposed their deception. By any measure, I'd won. So why did it feel like I'd lost everything that mattered? The answer came to me as I locked up the shop and headed home to a house that would never feel the same again. I hadn't lost everything that mattered. I'd learned that some things I thought mattered never really did. And sometimes, that was the most important lesson of all. 2 weeks later, I was replacing the transmission on a 1998 Camaro when Mrs. Donnelly appeared in my shop doorway like a harbinger of doom. She was carrying a plate of cookies and wearing the expression she reserved for delivering particularly juicy gossip. Eddie, dear, I thought you should know. Your wife is moving out today. I looked up from the transmission, wiping my hands on a rag. Is she now? Big moving truck and everything. That muscle-bound young man is helping her load boxes. So Zane hadn't left town after all. Interesting. Mrs. Donnelly, would you mind watching the shop for a few minutes? I think I need to go home and make sure nothing that belongs to me accidentally ends up in that truck. Her eyes lit up like Christmas morning. Of course, dear. Take all the time you need. I drove home to find exactly what Mrs. Donnelly had described. A large moving truck parked in my driveway with Zane and 2 other men loading furniture. Sienna was directing traffic from the front porch, pointing at items and giving orders like a general commanding troops. I parked on the street and walked up the driveway, noting that they were taking more than just Sienna's personal belongings. The dining room set we'd bought together, the living room furniture, even my grandmother's antique clock from the mantel. Afternoon, folks, I called out cheerfully. Moving day? Sienna turned around, her face tight with defiance. I'm taking what's mine. Are you? Because that dining room set was a wedding gift from my parents, and that clock belonged to my grandmother. Community property, she shot back. I have a right to half of everything. I pulled out my phone and showed her a document. Actually, according to the restraining order I filed this morning, you have a right to your personal clothing and effects. Everything else stays until the divorce is finalized. Zane stepped forward, flexing his muscles like a peacock displaying its feathers. She's not going anywhere without her stuff. Her stuff, yes. My stuff, no. I looked at the 2 men helping with the move. Day laborers who probably didn't know they were helping steal furniture. Gentlemen, I'm the homeowner, and I'm telling you to stop loading my property into that truck. The men looked uncertainly between me and Zane. One of them, an older Hispanic man with calloused hands, set down the box he was carrying. Senor, we don't want no trouble. There won't be any trouble, I assured him. Just put everything back where you found it, except for the lady's clothes and personal items. Zane stepped closer to me, trying to use his size to intimidate. You can't stop us from taking what belongs to her. I can and I am. This is my house. Those are my belongings and you're trespassing. We'll see about that. He pulled out his phone and started dialing. I'm calling the cops. Great idea. I was already dialing. Detective Arlo? It's Eddie Rollins. I've got some people trying to steal furniture from my house. Yes, I'll hold. Zane's confidence wavered when he realized I was actually talking to a police officer. He hung up his phone without completing his call. Detective Arlo is an old army buddy of mine, I explained conversationally. He's very interested in meeting you, Zane. Apparently, there are some questions about your activities in other towns. What activities? Oh, you know. Seducing married women, taking their money, moving on when things get complicated. Turns out it's a pattern with you. Sienna was staring at Zane with growing alarm. What is he talking about? Nothing. He's just trying to cause trouble. I pulled out a manila folder from my truck. Actually, I've got quite a bit of information here. Police reports from Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina, all involving one Zane Carter, personal trainer, who specializes in targeting wealthy married women. I opened the folder and started reading. Jacksonville, Florida. Zane Carter accused of embezzling $15,000 from client Sarah Morrison, married mother of two. Charges dropped when Carter left the state. Zane's face was turning red. That was a misunderstanding. Atlanta, Georgia. Zane Carter sued by client Rebecca Walsh for fraud and emotional distress. Settled out of court when Carter agreed to leave the state. You don't know what you're talking about. Charleston, South Carolina. Zane Carter arrested for attack after threatening the husband of client Jennifer Hayes. Charges reduced to disturbing the peace in exchange for Carter leaving the state. I looked up at Sienna, who was staring at Zane like she'd never seen him before. Notice the pattern? Every time things get messy, Zane moves on to the next town and the next victim. That's not true, Zane protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Which part? The part where you've been run out of 3 states, or the part where you saw my wife as just another mark? Sienna found her voice. Zane, is this true? Baby, don't listen to him. He's just trying to break us up. Are there other women? There were other women. Past tense. You're the only one who matters now. Were there other women while you've been with me? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Zane's hesitation was answer enough. There's one in particular you should know about, I said helpfully. Her name is Crystal. She works at the massage place on 5th Street. Zane's been seeing her every Tuesday and Thursday while you thought he was training clients. Sienna's face went through several shades of white. Is that true? How would you know that? Zane demanded. Because I hired a private investigator. Amazing what you can learn about someone when you actually try. I pulled out a series of photographs showing Zane entering and leaving the massage parlor, along with time-stamped receipts for services rendered. Sienna looked at them with the expression of someone watching a car accident in slow motion. You bastard, she whispered. Sienna, I can explain. Explain what? How you've been cheating on me while I was cheating on my husband for you? How you've been lying to me about everything? It's not like that. She slapped him, hard. The sharp crack echoed across the neighborhood, cutting through the quiet like a warning. Get out, she said quietly. What? Get out. Get away from me. Get away from my house. Get away from my life. This isn't your house, I pointed out. This is my house. But the sentiment is correct. A police car pulled up to the curb and Detective Arlo got out. He was a tall, lean man with prematurely gray hair and the kind of eyes that had seen too much. He surveyed the scene with professional interest. Eddie, looks like you've got quite a situation here. Just some confusion about property ownership, Arlo. Mr. Carter here was helping my wife move some furniture that doesn't belong to her. Arlo looked at Zane with the expression of a man studying an interesting insect. Zane Carter, I've been looking forward to meeting you. I haven't done anything wrong. Maybe not in this town. Yet, but I've been talking to some colleagues in other states. Seems like you leave quite an impression wherever you go. The 2-day laborers had quietly started unloading the truck, putting furniture back where they'd found it. They wanted no part of whatever was about to happen. Sienna, I said, you're welcome to pack your clothes and personal items. Everything else stays here until the divorce is final. She nodded numbly, still staring at the photographs of Zane with his other girlfriend. And Zane, I continued, I think it's time you moved on to the next town. This one's getting a little too hot for you. You can't make me leave. Detective Arlo stepped forward. Actually, he can't, but I can. See, I've got a warrant here for questioning in connection with a fraud case in South Carolina. You can come with me voluntarily for questioning, or I can arrest you right now. Your choice. Zane looked around desperately, like a trapped animal searching for an escape route. His eyes settled on Sienna, perhaps hoping for support. But she was still staring at the photographs with tears streaming down her face. This isn't over, he said to me. Yes, it is, I replied calmly. It's been over since the moment you left that note in my mailbox. You just didn't know it yet. Detective Arlo escorted Zane to the police car while the day laborers finished unloading the truck. Sienna stood on the porch looking lost and broken, surrounded by the wreckage of her grand plan. I'm sorry, Eddie, she said quietly. I know you are. I really thought he loved me. Maybe he did, in his way. But men like Zane don't love the same way the rest of us do. She picked up a suitcase full of her clothes and walked toward her car. At the driver's door, she turned back to me one last time. What happens now? Now you figure out what you really want from life, and I do the same. She drove away without another word, leaving me standing in the driveway of the house we'd shared for 15 years. The moving truck pulled away, the day laborers waved goodbye, and suddenly everything was quiet. Mrs. Donnelly appeared at my elbow like a materialization. Well, that was quite a show. It was something, all right? You did the right thing, you know. Some people need to learn that actions have consequences. I hope so, Mrs. Donnelly. I really hope so. As I walked back into my house now, truly and completely, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The place was exactly as it should be, filled with my belongings, my memories, my life. My phone buzzed with a text from Ray. Heard there was some excitement at your place. Everything okay? I typed back. Everything's perfect. Come over tonight. I'll grill steaks and tell you all about it. Can't wait. Oh, and Eddie. Yeah? Welcome back to the land of the living. I smiled as I put the phone away. Ray was right. For the first time in months, I felt truly alive, and it felt good.